Hello everyone, my name is Matthew Reed, and welcome back to Movie Snobs. This week I want to talk about a more recent movie, one that's still in theaters at the time of this review. Now, unlike my last review, I'm split pretty even down the middle about this movie, and find myself sometimes leaning towards either side of what I liked and disliked about the film. So without further ado, here is The Predator. Following the same vague order I had last week, I'll start by talking about the humor in The Predator. The movie was funny for the most part, though there was a clear divide between the humor that was ad-libbed and the written jokes. The ad-libbed humor was entertaining, as you could see that in these instances, the director was taking a step back and truly letting his actors shine. Though some of the scenes dragged on a bit with the jokes, they were still entertaining to watch unfold upon the screen. The next thing I will bring up is how much I enjoyed the action in this movie. I thought it was well paced throughout the movie, ensuring that there was never a dull segment of the movie where you were tapping your foot, waiting for the next slice and dice. They played well into the sheer brutality of the Predators, as well as keeping them tactical and stealthy when it was required, not relying on one of the two too heavily. I really enjoy the brutality and savagery of what these extraterrestrials are capable of, and this film filled my full appetite. I'll give it that much. Segueing from the action, I want to talk about probably the most important part of the positive portion of this review, the effect the movie had on me. Now, don't get me wrong here. I didn't have some epiphany on life or great realization after watching this. It wasn't anything like that. It was the actual fear that welled up like a peach pit in my stomach that made me dread the Predators from finding our human protagonists. There are very few surprises in this movie, going so far as to be predictable when they'll show up, and yet every time I knew they were coming, I got a nervous chill that ran down my spine. A chill I hadn't felt since I was on my couch, a young lad at the age of 7, watching the original Predator with my dad while Mom was out of town, and only because she was out of town. A feeling that I probably wasn't ready for back then, and that I definitely wasn't expecting to have in this newest installment. A feeling well-deserved. Now that I've gone into the positives of the movie, I want to dig into the negatives. Though there are many more negatives than positives here, I think that it should be said that the quantity of cons should not outweigh the quality of the pros. So for this segment, I will be going over things a little more fast-paced. I also want to give a spoiler warning here, as I will be divulging one or two minor yet unrevealed details from the trailers. First thing that I'm going to touch on here is the humor. And I know that I've gone over the humor and said that I generally liked the ad-lib jokes here and there, but the written ones were awful. They were poorly timed to a point where it was a bit cringy and drawn out to the point where me and my buddy who were watching the movie just wanted the scene to end, like it was distracting us from the story. Yes, they used some of the old lines from the previous movies as a shout out to the past, but they just weren't well done. The next egregious error that this movie makes is that the character's success and failure is so heavily based on luck that it's impossible not to acknowledge. Things like shooting yourself in the foot with a tranq gun, or being put with a random group of psych ward veterans that just so happens to have a perfect set of skills so that no two soldiers are alike and all of them act and feel like experts in their field. Things like that just can't be ignored. Why would a Predator, who has moved from tree to tree all movie and most previous movies, all of a sudden start walking on the ground just to spring a trap? So much of the success of these characters relied so heavily on luck that when things like that happened, I watched several other moviegoers put their palms on their faces in disgust. While I'm on the subject of characters, I want to mention how unmemorable some of these characters are. I can't even remember the name of anyone besides the main character and one of the supporting roles out of the 8 which were even given names. I have seen this movie 3 times to date, and I still only know 2 of the characters. When you make the characters unmemorable, then you cheapen the experiences and the feelings the director intends us to feel. These characters feel so expendable because they are so numerous, and I think that if you shaved half of these, the actions they take would have much more impact on the thoughts of the audience. The last negative, but perhaps the most important, would be the plot. Before this movie, I rewatched all the Predator movies, I delved deep into the wiki pages, and even the extended universe comics to prepare for this movie. Now that I've done all this and seen the movie, I can say I honestly didn't need to do any of that. The only relation to the other movies is small mentions or acknowledgments in the form of strictly fan service. The plot went off the rails a little bit, and while I can't get into too much detail, it didn't do anything new or unexpected and cliched itself into oblivion. Sometimes a new direction doesn't always mean that it's a good direction. I give it a 5 out of 10. Well, that's all the time I have for today, but let me know what you think by tweeting me at ZTV Goofing Off using the hashtag Movie Snobs. Until then, I'm Matt Reed, and this has been Movie Snobs.